If there's one thing that this world needs, it is a dose of humility. The world needs it. America needs it. Our political discourse definitely needs it. And so it set my mind to thinking, how do we encourage this humility? What's the source for this humility? And the answer to that in this particular video is going to be perspective. If this was live, I would ask the audience a show of hands, how many of you have seen the movie Ratatouille? Many hands would go up, and it's a great film. There's a lot of great scenes in it. There's a good message behind it. I love the scene where the rat is trying to teach his brother how to cook and blend flavors, and he just doesn't get it. Those scenes are great. All of the chef scenes with the pulling the hair, those are all great. But there's one scene that stands out in particular to me, and it's when the food critic comes in at the end, and the waiter comes over trembling and nervous, trying to impress this very prominent, powerful food critic. And he asks for his order. And he says, "I'm looking for a bit of perspective." And the waiter doesn't know what he means. And he says, grabs him by the shirt. I can't remember. My kids are a little bit older. And he says, tell the chef to hit me with his best shot. But the perspective is what's needed. And in order to accomplish that with this particular video, I want to look at perspective with size, scale, comparison. And I'm going to do that by using a single sheet of printer paper. Math, numbers, they fascinate me. I love numbers. I love looking into complicated things. And recently I heard a quote that said that simplicity is merely complexity resolved. And I like that definition a lot. And so what I want to do over the next couple of minutes is try to make complexity be resolved. We're going to do that by looking at this. See if I can get this into frame. If you look closely, this is a representation of the Milky Way. And I've represented it with 3 pixels. The Milky Way, as many of you already probably know, is 100,000 light years across in distance. And we hear that number and we go, that's a long ways. But how do we really put that into perspective? So, taking this sheet of paper, okay, it's very something tangible that anybody can hold. We all have printer paper. Grab a sheet right now. Go to your printer and grab a sheet and feel this thickness, okay? To represent 100,000 light years, you would need to take sheets of paper and begin to line them up like this. So a ream of paper, and then another ream of paper, and another ream of paper. And in order to get to a scale that our minds can somewhat comprehend, you would need to have 3 miles worth of paper stacked up end to end like this on its side. So 3 miles. So visualize 3 miles. Go to Google Maps, type in where you're at right now, and pick a destination you think is 3 miles away and visualize that. And then try to have your mind visualize those reams of paper running along the sidewalk and through intersections and under overpasses and by bus stops and stores and Starbucks. 3 miles worth of paper, okay? That's the frame. That's the scale that we're starting with for the size of the Milky Way. And you go, well, that's a lot of paper. Well, how does that relate back to us? It relates back to us in this, that the entire distance of our solar system, from sun out to, it used to be Pluto, but out to the end of our particular solar system, is the mere thickness of one sheet of printer paper in that 3 mile span. That is mind-boggling. Mind-boggling. So, that's the frame for beginning this consideration of scale. And my point that I started with at the beginning is that this scale should create humility in us. It should cause us to feel our smallness and our insignificance, and it should cause us to begin to go, wow, maybe I should really be a little more understanding in my positions. Maybe I should not be so dogmatic in my beliefs towards people who disagree with me. We are incredibly small, and that's not even touching the iceberg. If we just left it at the 3 miles of paper, and a single sheet for our solar system, that would be enough to stir humility in us. But as I tweeted when I was working on this back in August, and I'll show you this, I tweeted this particular tweet. I can't read it backwards. It says, how do you visualize data that is beyond the brain's capacity for preserving scale? Hashtag God, hashtag universe, hashtag conundrum. At the 3 mile realm, we can preserve that scale because we can visualize 3 miles because we can drive it, we can walk it, we can run it. And we can visualize a single sheet of paper because we can feel it. But what happens when we get beyond the Milky Way, which is our galaxy? Well, this is where we get back to the pixel aspect of this. So the Milky Way, as I stated earlier, 3 pixels, okay? Or 3 miles worth of paper. The next galaxy, LMC, 158,000 light years, 5 pixels, okay? Or 5 miles of paper. We get next to the Andromeda, which is 2.5 million light years. And you can see that line of pixels is expanding quite a bit. We're well beyond the 5 pixels. We keep on moving down the chart to the cigar, and our scale begins to become such that we're really zooming out here. And if you look at the cigar in comparison to the Andromeda, it's several times more. And then we get to the pinwheel and the sombrero. And when we get to the sombrero, this is where we begin to get to the first multiple lines worth of pixels, okay? If you look at the sombrero, there's 2 lines. 29.35 million light years. The whirlpool, 30 million light years. The NGC, 61 million light years. And it gets to the point here where it almost becomes kind of silly in that, like I tweeted, how do our brains preserve this scale, okay? And you go, wow, that's great. The tadpole is 420,000 light years away. That's very impressive. Yes, it is. But when we get down to the one below it is where my mind was blown, and I still can't figure this out. That one of the farthest known galaxies from us is 13.3 billion light years away. And if you look at this block of pixels, okay, that block of pixels is the 13.3 billion. So again, we're the 3 pixels up there, and this block, 400 and some odd thousand pixels, represents the 13.3 billion light years. So this should invoke in us a true sense of humility because we are so insignificantly small. With all of the drama, all of the hyperbole going on in the media, with our political landscape, I encourage, I exhort, I beg almost each one of you listening to stop and consider the scale and say, wow, we are truly small as mankind. And when David the psalmist says, what is man that God is mindful of us? It's mind-blowing. You can't put your head around that. So it should cause all of us to stop being so dogmatic. It should cause all of us to stop being so set in our ways when it comes to my way or the highway. And it should really evoke in us a sense of awe and wonder. And it should maybe even motivate us to turn off the TV, shut down Netflix, stop binge watching Amazon Video and Netflix or Hulu. Go outside, maybe even drive 25, 30 miles outside of your city and stargaze. Maybe even spend a few dollars and go to an observatory and stargaze. You see, we are so small, our solar system is so big, the universe is so grand that it is really wonderful to consider. And I fear that we spend way too much time nitpicking on all of these minute details that we feel so strongly about when really in the grand scheme of things, they are quite insignificant. I'm going to link below to a video that does a scale representation even beyond this and gets into the concept of a multiverse, which even makes those 413 some odd thousand pixels seem really, really insignificant. The last thing I'll say here is within this single sheet of paper from Sun to, I don't know, roughly Pluto, the distance of our solar system on average, there's 400 and some odd thousand atoms, okay, in a single sheet of paper. To scale the Earth in this sheet of paper, out of those 400 and some odd thousand atoms, we're about a single atom, little less than a single atom. About 2/3 of an atom is the Earth in this single sheet. So be humbled by the size of creation. Be humbled by the scale of the created universe around us, and turn off your feeds, turn off your news, turn off all the bloviating buffoons that seek to stir up your emotions and divide you and divide us and make us all hot takers. We're all victims of their hot takes. We're on outrage overload, and there's no reason to be. So stop, ponder, and let the size of creation, the wonder of creation, cause you to humble yourself and begin to treat fellow man with respect, dignity, love. And perhaps, if I'm speaking to Christians, you probably already know this, but perhaps even let the scale of that begin to prick your conscience, stir your heart towards questions of God, questions of creation, questions of the wonder of your body and all of the myriad billions and trillions of cells and atoms in your body. So if it at least extends to your fellow man, great. If it takes you to another level to even have you begin to consider the size and scale and nature of God in the created order, better. Thank you for listening. Have a wonderful day.